Hello, and thank you for joining today's QE Babble. Yeah, it's brilliant to see so many people signed up. We've got over 200 today, which is amazing. I think it shows the strength of the topic and also of the brilliant panel, which I'm going to introduce in a second. We're here because the pace of change in technology is faster than ever. AI, new tooling, new delivery models, they're all reshaping how software is built and crucially how quality is owned across teams. And while many of us have moved from titles like tester, quality assurance engineer to quality engineer, the real story is how the role itself has evolved between or beneath those labels. So today we're going to try and break that journey down. First, we're going to look at the evolution of testing to QA to QE, what drove those shifts, and how expectations have broadened. Secondly, we're going to look at what those changes actually mean in practice. So the difference potentially in skill set required, mindset, the challenges, and how teams have adapted and evolved as we're now baked into having quality engineers within teams. Finally, and I think most excitingly, we're going to look at what the future might look like. Clearly, there's no real answers to that. There's no defined. We don't know where we're going to go, but we're going to look at what AI is going to do to the future of technology, how it's going to affect quality engineering. There's some pretty big, robust theories coming from the panel today, and I think this is where things start to get really exciting. So to guide us through it all, we've got a brilliant panel together today to do that. So I want to welcome them on now. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oh.
Thanks so much for joining. Thank you. So they're going to be sharing their experiences, honest insights, and where they see the biggest opportunities emerging as the landscape continues to shift. So thanks again for joining us today over lunchtime. If you're watching, we really want you to try and contribute as well. So in the chat or comment section on the right of your screen, you should put your opinion, tell us what you think. If you've got questions you want to ask the panel, definitely get those in as well. We want to hear what you've got to say. We'll get to answering some of those questions towards the second part of today's session. So we're going to kick off, go with the first kind of question, which is to look at the evolution of testing into what we now consider it to be generally as kind of quality engineering. Leigh, I'll come to you first if you want to just briefly introduce yourself, what your role is, and potentially give us a bit of an answer to that question.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Leigh Rathbone. I'm head of AI at a company called CAVU. I've just transitioned into that role sort of the last 2-3 weeks. Before that I was head of quality engineering. So to answer your question, Matt, so I've been in testing and tech for 28 years now. So I was around when test teams and a tester was called either a tester or a QA, depending on what company you worked at. And I think for me, you know, the QA back then and the tester back then was checking quality. It was about finding defects. Whereas now, you know, QE, and I'll come to like how I think we've progressed to this point. I think QE now engineers quality into the team and into the solution. I think for me, a QE is more technical, and a QE for me is about preventing defects rather than finding defects. So that's just a high level. I think we saw QE sort of as a term sort of emerge, as you said, probably 10-15 years ago. In 2014, I changed my QAs to be QEs way back at a company called Think Money in Manchester. And at the time, that was quite radical. But that was because I could see the change that was happening. The QAs were becoming more technical. They were more full stack. They could look at APIs, services. They could look at databases. But for me, engineers build stuff, right? So the QA started to build stuff. And what was that? Well, it was test frameworks, automation frameworks. We were building stuff. We were far more technical. We could look at the full stack. We could look at the architecture. We started to have the same conversations with devs. Why? Because Agile came about. So Agile brought the engineers and QEs together into a team of Agile teams. So that, for me, removed barriers. Before that, we were a little bit isolated in Waterfall, whereby we were still have perceptions that we were just testing at the UI. But once we started to pair with engineers, be part of those teams, for me, I feel we started to upskill. Then along came the cloud, we upskilled again. Tools became more available. tools evolved, more tools became available, automation became the thing. So we had to evolve and change, just like Madonna, the pop star, evolves and changes. She goes into a cave, comes out with a different sound and a different look. QAs, QEs, testers, we've had to do that on this journey, because if we failed to evolve, none of us would be on this screen now. We've had to change from way back in 1998, where we were just checking quality. We have progressed and evolved just like we've had to. Why? Because the need of the QA and the QE has evolved and changed. We have now become more technical. We are now, I think we have as much credibility as engineers in a team, an agile team. So that's where I think we've come from. We've come from this checking quality to a point where we engineer quality. We've come from this past where we were just literally there to find defects. When I started, I was just there to find Y2K defects. But now, me, my teams, we're there to prevent quality. We're there to have those quality conversations at the very, very beginning, and not just be seen as a phase. So we evaluate, we enable, right? Whereas QA happens at the end. So that would be, in a nutshell, to kickstart the conversation. That would be my sort of journey. I think there's been triggers, Agile, the cloud, all the different kinds of tools. But I think the main thing here is the need. We have needed to evolve, otherwise we would now be irrelevant.
Cheers, Leigh. Yeah, really, really interesting. Also, you have neatly not stepped into the second question, which is going to be interesting, on how you feel that might have affected the mindset or the skills needed from the people who do these types of jobs. So appreciate that. Paul, welcome. Thanks for joining. Do you want to just introduce yourself and try and tackle that one for us as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Firstly, I wanted to say that's probably the first time I've ever been compared to Madonna, but thanks for that. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Paul Darby. I'm a delivery lead in 𝐒̀𝐞. Delivery lead obviously is not necessarily a term that you'd necessarily always put against sort of testing and QE, but effectively what I do within the business is make sure that we're delivering really great quality engineering solutions to solve client problems. So that's what I do for 𝐒̀𝐞. I've been in testing, QA, quality engineering now for the best part of 30 years. So I've really sort of lived this transition of testing into QA, into QE. And really to your question, Matt, around the testing into QA, if we think right back to the infancy of sort of technical solutions, i.e. computer-based technical solutions, it was all about build it quickly, build a solution, and then give it to somebody to test it. And it was all about the testing, and it was a reactive approach. It was, I've got a solution, let's see if there are any bugs in it. And that's fine. That was good. That found those problems. But of course, you've already made all of the mistakes that you could have made to the point where you've created a bad solution. So QA, I think, to me, was a reaction to that, in trying to say, well, how do we try and not capture the things at the end, but how do we start to prevent it? But it was still very much a push the emphasis on testers and people in that field with that discipline. So they'd start to do things like static reviews and review requirements and designs and try to say, okay, if we get these things right, then the solution's going to be great. And then when we do the functional testing, the dynamic testing, still at the end, we're less likely to find issues and defects and that. And to some extent, that was successful, but it was still reactive, and it was still pushing quality towards just one sort of power base to try and be the harbingers of this is what you need to do to get to a quality position. But I think one of the key drivers that meant that people like us in this profession needed to be responsive and take this a step forwards was that technology solutions, whether it's websites, web solutions, things like that, just became more and more mainstream. And there's so much more choice out there nowadays that if you get it wrong, someone can just go somewhere else. They can just go and buy a product or a solution somewhere else so much more easily than they ever used to be. And so there's a loss of your competitive advantage if you don't have a good quality solution, and people will jump ship. So suddenly, testing right at the end wasn't good enough. QA isn't good enough because it's still reactive and it's still about individuals doing testing.
Right.
So what do we need to do next to improve that? And I think that will take us into question 2. But to me, that's sort of really how we moved from testing into QA.
Appreciate that. Thank you. You're saying about QA still being reactive, which I think is an interesting point. Suhas, thank you for joining. I know you've been very busy over the last few weeks, been away. So you said you're slightly jet lagged, but I appreciate you joining today.
Thanks, Matt, and everyone. Hi, everyone, and Matt, thanks for having me at CAVU. Yes, and I think my fellow panel members have already said most of the things, and being at the last, I might echo a few of the things what I've already said, but I would start. I mean, for me, it's more of the transition itself was the need of the hour, and it's more of the technology landscape itself has been evolving from years to years, and things have been changing across different sectors as well. So adapting to that is always, it might be a developers or a QA or any kind of streams, they need to get upgraded. And I always thought being a QA at heart, it's still QA at heart, but being a QA engineer is the foundation of being a QA at the earlier. And started my career as a QA, 2 decades back, but it has been an evolving kind of technology standards, technology landscape, and looking at quality is no longer an afterthought. That's what we are here from a transition point of it. So instead of testing at the end, as Paul and Leigh rightly said, it's now getting it very early in the stages, understanding the landscape, understanding the ecosystem of the systems, the digital channels, what we call the website, the APIs, the middlewares, the backend, the databases, and different channels what we have. So evolving into that areas where we think is more of understanding what are you trying to do as a quality. I mean, is it about finding bugs? That was the afterthought, which was earlier from a QA perspective. Now we start looking at how do we bring in more and more tooling recommendations? How do we bring in more of skills where we can prevent bugs rather than finding it? So yeah, that helps from a perspective of being an engineering at heart and making sure that as a landscape, as a technology, you want to adapt to what the engineers are speaking. So the language becomes more and more relevant in terms of understanding. And always everybody knows that QA becomes a bottleneck. Everybody says, the QA has to happen. You are holding up the releases, you are holding up the kind of delivery. So that's something which has transitioned from QA to QE now. So suddenly now we are getting feedback more faster. You can see that people are getting used to the way there are no kind of sign-offs waiting now. Everything is being as part of the quality gates. You have continuous integration in place. So evolving has the need of the hour and everybody understands. So you come with certain kinds of skills, the skill needs to be upgraded, and at a certain point, collaboration becomes essential as well. So that's where you see now DevOps, developers, business analysts, everybody goes together. And there are certain kinds of methodologies we follow, waterfall or agile, irrespective of it. I think being at the start of the project, being at the start of the delivery, and handling that kind of weights with respect to having delivery models being adapted as part of the QE transitions, that has helped to actually mature the way the delivery was earlier. And now transitioning to that space has helped actually quality to becoming more and more kind of checks and integrations, which has helped the delivery to be faster into the market. And now delivery, as you see, previously it was like, I've been in the projects where it was like months together to get a software into the market. Now you have week or 2 weeks, even a day. I've seen multiple releases going in a day with the mechanism and the quality gates which we have in place. So yeah, as the landscape are evolving, it's going to be a lot of things which are moving ahead. And between all these talks, I forgot to introduce myself. Getting into that because I thought the topic was hot and being there, but I'll just conclude that with my introduction. So I'm Suhas. I'm the head of quality engineering at Zanoo. Zanoo is a pure play test consulting firm which specializes in quality assurance and quality engineering. So our landscape of transitioning is also part of our organizations, and we specialize in both. So yeah, pretty much. But my panel members have already concluded a lot of good things they have experienced, and I've just echoed what they have already said.
I'll make sure you're not last next time. always a tough gig, to be fair.
Yeah.
But no, appreciate that. Yeah, wrote down some really interesting points there. Kind of similar to definitely what Paul was saying about it being less about it being reactive, more about it being a baked-in process, a maturing basically of how to test things. You said about quality is more about talking about what you're deciding that you want to test and actually talking about that earlier in the process rather than just testing as at the 11th hour.
I do have another couple of points, Matt, if I can. One of them is a story, right? So when Alexa launched, which I think was 2016, I was one of the first freaks to go out and buy one because I was excited by this new technology. And then I got as a tester, I got curious and I thought, well, if I want to build my own skill, how would I build my own skill? Because I'm an engineer, right? I like to build. So I went into the Amazon Developer Toolkit, which is free, by the way, and I started to play around and I started to build my own skill and I got stuck. So I went into a pairing mode with somebody because that's what QEs, that's what engineers do. We pair when we're stuck. And then I went into mobbing mode or ensemble mode when the both of us got stuck. And between 6 of us, we actually built our first Alexa skill. Now, building that Alexa skill enabled me to understand the architecture, the system, what's already been tested elsewhere by Amazon, right? So all of a sudden, my testing strategy now, I now understand how a skill is built. So I now know where the risk is for me when I build a new skill. So that allowed me to focus. And then it allowed me to realize that the real value in testing my own skill was realizing that voice got turned into text, and you can obviously automate the hell out of that. And I didn't need to test the actual voice bit at the top layer, that because Amazon have done that to hell. So that was story number one. And I think that is a really good example of us transitioning from being a QA to a QE. And that was 2017. And my last point is Dan Ashby has a DevOps model, because somebody's mentioned DevOps, and he's got the infinity loop for DevOps. And this is probably 10, 15 years old, by the way. And what he's done is he's written very simply in handwriting, we test here, we test here. And on the 8 segments of the DevOps infinity loop, which you can go and Google, you'll see that he's actually put we test here, we test here, we test here. And not just in the designing stage, he's done it like in the build stage, but also when we go live, he's actually got we test here. And I think that's another big change with engineering. We've realized that we test throughout, right at the very beginning when it's conversations, and then right at the very end when we're actually in live.
Okay, thank you. To be honest, a lot of it then leads me to start thinking about what the role is of a defined quality engineer, given that we've shifted so much to the point where we're now very much involved in pairing, mobbing, collaborating with other engineers. Like what place there is for that standalone quality engineer, given that you're involved at such an early stage with the people, can that role be amalgamated into one person potentially? But before we answer that, because I think that's probably a point for section 3, I'm just going to flash up a couple of things that people have said here. So there's been a couple of interesting definitions of what we've been talking about. So Abdul, who's watching, said he's just defined it very simply. Testing is finding bugs, QA prevents bugs, and QE builds systems that makes bugs harder to create. And then I'm just going to put this one on from Philippa as well. So Philippa, thanks for watching. She said, for me, the shift from testing QA to QE is very focused on approaching quality from a holistic view and quality first direction. So we are preventing and being proactive versus being reactive. The QE role enables the full team to own quality and engineer it from an ideation, which is just what Leigh was talking about there. My biggest concern with it is that not only are QEs being asked to enable teams to engineer quality in from the beginning, but they're also expected to be doers who are doing the testing at the end as well. I've lost the last part of the point, unfortunately, but what she was saying there at the start was really interesting. I'm going to move on to, so thank you for those. I'm going to move on to the next Next question now, if I can, which is, so we've spoken about what that shift has been. I want to try and focus on what we think the different requirement is for people who work in these roles now, from a skills and mindset point of view, given that we're talking about quality engineering. Paul, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to the point you just flashed up, actually, that I totally I agree entirely, especially with the second one about the distinction between quality engineers needing to assist organizations to bake quality into the entire engineering cycle, but they still have to do some testing. And I'll come to that, but I do agree with the point that was being made. It's interesting. I mean, within ROC, we've got this view, and we've been promoting with our clients, etc., that really quality engineering is a mindset. It's not just something you do at the end or just a discipline. It's something that the entire organization needs to get behind and actually deliver. And the reason is because, so the point that was made, because it is a holistic view. It's about pace. It's about repeatability. And when I say repeatability, it's about not just getting through a quality life cycle for one distinct project or program, but actually creating the repeatability and ability to sustain that way of working through maintenance and support of that solution, and through the next project and the next project and the next project. It's about everybody within that organization having good quality processes and procedures. The tools are used correctly. The comms coming out of those tools is as effective as it can be, and all of those collectively, and making them all as good as can be, and the people within the organization buying into that and making that consistent and persist. That's quality engineering. But there's still quality engineers that is where we've evolved into, where we're very much spearheading that. We're saying that from the user perspective, your solution that you want at the end of the day needs to be as good as this, and it needs to be able to do all of this and correct all of this stuff up front, and you'll get to your goals. So we're very much the people flying the flag of what QE is, but QE is not just for QE engineers to make happen. It is for the whole business to make happen. It's for them all to buy into. And only then will we get that repeatability of process. And only then will we get a really great CI/CD process that really, really works, and really good functional agile teams working together, and support knows what's coming down the line, and you can maintain your systems, and you know exactly how you're going to approach your project or program each time you get to it. So it's such a huge transition from that QA perspective, where QA, and I said earlier on that it was still a reactive process. And to me it was, because there was still a design taking place, and someone's having a bright idea, and people are working in their own way, and then they'll hand it over to testers, and they'll do their static reviews, and they'll test some solutions. And it's still very much on its own, and it's still the poor son at the table sort of thing. QE involves the whole organization. There are QEs, but QE is much broader than just one or two people doing some testing and telling everyone else how to do their job better. And to the point that was made before, I think that's where that distinction becomes a little bit blurred, because yes, you still need to test a solution. You do still need to do that. You haven't got away from that. You still need to test something. And the QEs, the people who are thinking about as a user, are still the right people to do that. But they're also the right people to tell the rest of the organization, or help the rest of the organization to be as good as they can be, so that when you get to that testing, it's short, it's sweet, it's slim, it's low cost, and it's as effective as it can be.
You mentioned about QA QA being described as the poorer sibling, which is something people have said on this program quite a few times in the past. Do you think the shift to quality engineering has enhanced the overall perception of people who work in this industry?
I think it's had to, and I think the reason it has is because people further up the ziggurat, the C-suite, etc., are beginning to realise they are just as culpable for quality in their solutions as the engineer, as the developer, as the program manager, as the product owner, as the QEs themselves, and so I think, because they're realizing and have had to realize that culpability is across the board more, they're now listening to those people who are still running the tests. And in my experience and what I'm seeing, I have a dialogue with the people at the top tier now, where I never would have had that when I was just a tester. So I think there's still a long way to go, but I think we're finally beginning to step in the right direction. But I think that's where QEs are really going to earn their money going forwards, is helping organizations broaden their perspective of quality and fix it in a number of areas. They will still need to run tests, and they will still need to use the latest and greatest tools to do that. And that's the right, but they're also going to be working with the business to make sure overall quality is baked in at all levels.
Cheers, Paul. Suhas, if I can come to you. So we're talking about what we feel the skill and mindset change has been as we've evolved from being testers to quality engineers.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. And I think what I feel is that, from the transition, what I've seen from becoming a QE and had within Zanoo as well, what we are looking at, we work with multiple client ecosystems, irrespective of it. We work with fintechs, we work with kind of financial institution and other sectors as well, where we see it's about the mindset, it's culture itself. A lot of people talk about the fancy shift left and kind of a thing. It's not that QE drives it. It's an organization that needs to embed as a process. It cannot be done by an engineering saying that I will do it from the start. I can do it if a developer or a business analyst or the product owner are not involved as part of this process, and they change their mindset to work together and build that process. The QE is not about automation. The QE is not about building more and more assets. It's not about that. The QA, when you see the transition of QA to QE, it's all about how do you change the process of evolving testing capabilities across the landscape of technology as well as the delivery model as well. So if you think that QA is time consuming and it's gonna take more time, and QE is gonna take you less time and make it more faster, that's the mindset what we are looking at from a lot of people. But actually, are we testing? Are we doing the right thing? Is the product getting tested? If the software is getting tested? So as quality is growing and the mindset of people from that transition of having this kind of tooling around, and in the market you see there are hundreds of tools which comes into market daily, and everything says that we are going to test end to end, we are going to do this. From a QE perspective, we think that we have that kind of skills which can incorporate all these tools to make it more quicker. But end of the day, the mindset of bringing all this together and making that change of having this software delivery as a process, or the product itself is moving across different quality gates, is reaching that end customer with quality, is what evolving. And majority of my team which are working on is just that we are having that coaching at the start to make sure that everybody understands what we are doing as part of quality engineering, rather than just saying that I use X tools, I will build this assets, this is going to help you out with a lot of things. That's not what we are trying to say from a quality engineering perspective. Quality engineering has its own kind of strategies, it has its own kind of evolvement and improvements and best practices. That's where I see the transition has happened from QA to QE. Still you have to write test, as Paul rightly said. Yes, you have to write test, you have to run test, but there is that mechanism which can help to identify the bottlenecks and the impacts and kind of help those kind of areas where we can move forward and we can build more kind of assets which can introduce a new kind of transition for the stakeholders where they can get a feedback more faster as well. So transition is always there, but the mindset and the shift is from within the organizations and within coaching those kind of our collaborative kind of people around us that makes us an impact and the shift towards it. So I feel that it's from a shift from reactive testing will be always moved away from that QE perspective where QE hands-on with respect to all the skills, what they bring in with tooling and probably with the methodologies or the processes. I think that's where I see the transition going. And as you know, now we have low code, no code kind of tools and a lot of things coming into place as well. They talk about energizing, building and more test. It's not building thousands of tests and running and saying that, oh, okay, the software has 0 defects because I've written thousands of tests. It's not that kind of culture we are trying to build. We are trying to build with quality and making sure that whatever test you write are impactful tests and bring that kind of evolution within those engineering practice, which I think will be the milestones that the team holds as part of the end process. So that's the transition I would see, and mainly it's the faster and the safe releases into the market. What from a quality engineering perspective, I would sustain. I think to answer to your point, I think end of the day, for me, it's the product or the software, what I'm testing with the tools and with the approach and with the mindset of evolving and changing those is a must from a quality engineering perspective. It's not about test automation or data or performance or security. These are all part of the process, but it's not it defines quality engineering. So.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Cheers, Suhas. Leigh, what do you think's been the change required for people who've moved from who've been in the industry a long time, moved from being testers to quality engineers?
Okay, it's confession time, and Matt's going to hate me for this. Whenever I do these things, webinars, I don't prepare because I like to hear the questions in the moment because I think it makes me think differently. So that's why you'll see me writing stuff down during this session, because it's when I'm getting inspiration from the previous 2 speakers. So for me, I think we've had to evolve to think about and building traits and skills such as, and these are not going to be obvious ones, but things like curiosity, risk awareness, systems thinking about experiments more rather than just doing everything in a block and saying that's done. It's about testing hypotheses. It's about user advocacy, being more data literacy, as an example. For me, I don't think a QE should stop where it's just the squad's boundaries. I think we should also think about the data world and what does it look like when it goes through to reports and goes through all the data lakes, etc. Influence and facilitation. So again, you might think, well, wasn't that there as the QA? But I think in the agile world and the QE world, I think we've had to grow and develop those skills. The continuous learning mindset, I think, is key for DevOps, but it's also key for QEs. And then, of course, I've got other stuff. Very quickly, I'll wrap through it. We've had to become full stack. We've had to get comfortable with doing less and thinking, who is the right person to do the right testing at the right time? So if anybody's watched Lord of the Rings, you'll know a character called Gollum. And he says something like, my precious. Well, that was QAs, right? We owned testing. How dare someone else think they can do our craft? Well, I think the skill and behavior trait we've had to develop is understanding that actually others can do testing better than us. And that's okay. So engineers, they can do unit tests far better than us. They know the tools, they've got the mindset. It's their bread and butter. Why on earth wouldn't we not only allow them, but then pair with them to learn, to grow? My biggest growth came from when I paired with devs back in 1999 to do unit tests with them. I didn't do them, but I paired and I gave inputs and I gave feedback. So I think there's another one. And I think I'll shut up now.
No, keep going, mate. Keep going.
We've had to get more technical. And I know Paul and Suhas has said it's not all about automation, but here's a great analogy that I heard from Rob Meany yesterday. For me, it's not about getting the automation skills and building an automation team, which is what happened in the old QA world. It's about enabling everybody to have the automation skills in the team. You know, and there's another, and I'm not talking about QA, I'm talking about the whole team. And you're probably thinking, can delivery managers, can product owners, can they embrace automation or testing? Yes, they goddamn can. Guess what? Product owners make great testers, as do delivery managers. Why? Because they see the world differently to engineers and QEs. So that, again, is just probably a little insight into how weird my brain thinks.
Yeah.
I think I know you want to move on, Matt, but I think from the perspective of quality engineering being broader than just testing, the need to make sure that you've got quality approaches to requirement management, change management, automation, absolutely, your config management, all of those things are processes and procedures that done well, done with quality, impact your ability to deliver a quality technology transformation project and ultimately a good outcome. So I 100% agree with everything that's been said. Suhas and Leigh, of what they've said is great, but I think we have to be careful not to put QE just in the camp of testing and automation. It's everything that enables you to end up with a good quality solution and ongoing way of working.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I think I'll just give you my perspective, if I can, just from a people point of view. I think one of the things that I've noticed definitely is that, particularly in the last 2 years, with the sort of technology market going through a slower and more difficult time, it's absolutely clear from the people that I talk to who are in kind of hiring positions that they are not necessarily looking to bring in more people. They're looking to get more from their existing teams, and they're looking to drive efficiency within each individual role. So it's definitely started with Agile because it brought teams together, but now more than ever, it's about, from what I'm being told, it's about actually trying to get more from each individual rather than just kind of, you know, simple solution, go out and get more people, go and get more quality engineers, go and get more software engineers. It's about getting those people to be multi-skilled, which is one of the things that Leigh and Paul were just talking about as well. And there's been some really good things that people have been saying as well. So I'm just gonna flash one up, which I just saw, which I thought was really honest and interesting, from Norhan, who I don't know. So thanks for watching, Norhan. In my opinion, true quality engineering, where quality is built in and introduced up front, will be achieved through coherent TD practices. In our common practices, I would describe it as QA. We're designing and implementing quality throughout the process and adding quality gates in our pipeline, but in reality, we haven't yet reached a full quality engineering state. So I thought that was an interesting one. Thanks for that. And loads of other good points coming in from people, which is great to see, and it's good to see it sparking some conversation. And Rosie's watching as well. Rosie from MOT fame. Motorcon fame. The move towards viewing the product from a systems perspective is helping people see that it is much more than automation. That's what we've been seeing and hearing from MOT conversations. So thanks for that, Rosie. So the next part. So we've got a good 20 minutes left, and this was the part that I was particularly interested in. I didn't think we could cover this before we spoke about what had kind of gone before, though, is what potentially is coming up and how the industry is evolving. Definitely from the people that I talk to on a regular basis, a lot of people are, I would say, slightly concerned, in all honesty, and they're slightly curious, definitely, on what the future of quality engineering looks like, given the pace of change in technology now, particularly with how AI is flooding the market, and you know, it's infiltrating into everyone's individual role in all sectors. So it's a big question, it's a chunky question, but it would be interesting to hear from the panel on what they think the future of quality engineering looks like now that we're in the phase we're in. Suhas, can I come to you first?
Yes, Matt. I think what I feel is that being in the consulting world, I've been working with multiple stakeholders across different client ecosystems, and we have seen that there is a change in the evaluation of how quality engineering also is looked upon. So we have people who have expertise in test automation, we have people expertise in performance, data, and security side of it. So evaluating and working through this kind of channels, and we have seen that people having multi-skills is a burnout as well, but it's again, as Leigh rightly said, it's learning. You keep learning, you keep adapting, you keep upgrading yourself to understand the landscape of quality itself. So the transition is from a full stack QA is what I'm looking at. AI is something which is a hot topic. Everybody is saying AI will replace quality engineers. Quality will always depend on AI. I feel writing tests and it is not the hype it has created. It's more of, for me, AI specializations or from a full stack QA specializations. These are two different kinds of things. The need of the R is, from my side, is that someone who is looking at multi-skills, having test automation experience along with performance, because a project which runs for me for 6 months might discover a test automation / a performance. So full stack QA is an essential need of the hour. From a consulting side of it, it might not be the same across when you are working in-house in a organizations where they might have specialized quality engineers who will be working on different levels. So yeah, the based on the market, based on the needs, I think the evaluation is changing. But what I look at right now is that having multi-skilled kind of engineers is definitely helping us grow as a market and build as substantially helping satisfy the client needs, and as well as growing our industries as well. So that's on stake on the full stack QA. But when I come to AI itself, we have been looking to understand how AI is evolving within our ecosystems as well. We have talked about multiple low code, no code. There are a lot of enterprise tooling which they are talking about, but they talk about making the test more faster and making it more impactful, building it more and more tests. How can you run it more? How can you generate hundreds and thousands of test cases? It boils down to me. For me, it's more about understanding the mechanism. You can write tests. That's not the hype, right? The myth is there are failures, there are kind of flaky tests, there are kind of errors, there are kind of environment stability. How does AI help in those cases? Group it together and give kind of an analysis of this test. That's where AI will improve quality to programming, because the analysis and the troubleshooting is taking more time than writing test. So that's where I would see the specialization coming in, building in more tools. And if you look at tools, there are multiple tools which can now integrate with any of the AI tools, and that can give you more of analysis and kind of help you out to write better tests or make your life more easier in terms of how do you report it, kind of a thing. So yeah, transition is depending upon how the market and the organizations are set up. But for us, from a consulting side of it, if you look at full stack QA, that's where things are moving and evolving as a change.
Yeah, and that's it. You just said there, and that's so true. It depends on the organization. It depends on a lot of factors around, who they are, their history, pace of change within companies can be so different. I think one of the interesting things would be to look at how tech startups are approaching quality in the future, because they're the ones who are most likely to sort of bake in from the outset a new way of working. The sort of large organizations, enterprise scale, they're going to be slower to change. But even they, I'm sure, are starting to build in some efficiencies using AI. Leigh, we spoke about this a lot. You came up with, or you've got some really interesting theories, particularly about the designations, different kind of role types that might spawn out of what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. So where to start with this one? Okay, so loads of people on this call have probably heard testing is dead, QEs are dead. Right, I've written down the years I heard that: 2009, 2011, 2015, 2019, and November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. I don't think we're dead at all. I think we've got loads and loads of opportunities But let's focus on something right. This is going to be the goddamn truth. There is going to be more code put live in the next 5 years than we have ever seen before. Why? Because people will start trusting AI, right? AI can generate the code. So we're going to get more code put live. So I think there's something coming. I think there's a disaster of some enormity coming that's going to shine the light back on quality, right? So yes, we might see in the next couple of years that the spotlight is on engineers because they can create the code quicker. But I think there is something coming, an event of some sort, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. But I think it will shine the light well and truly back on how did this happen? What do we need to put in place? What governance do we need? What care, what caution in order to make sure quality is there so we don't have another human loss of this sort again. Now, I'm being dramatic. You might think I'm being OTT. I don't think I am. This could be the most important 5 minutes of my life because everybody on this call needs to understand that the future skills of a QE are all around thinking about the governance, the caution, the care in order to drive quality. Governance hasn't been my best friend till now. Governance I've always seen as slowing me down, getting in my goddamn way. Get out of my way, governance, because I just want to go faster and faster. That was until ChatGPT launched. And now I've realized governance is my friend. It's my guardrail. It's going to be the... So I had a car crash 8 weeks ago. What kept me safe? The central reservation, right? That's governance. That's the equivalent of governance. So I do think our skill sets will be more focusing around risk, more thinking about how can we keep our customers safe. I think there will be a pulling back of having to write code because of what Sue has said around, the automation tools getting more and more AI savvy. Playwright right now, the MCP in Playwright means that you don't need to be coding in order to write really decent automation tests. So there's an indicator of what's coming. So where's our value? What we're going to need to do going forward? QA, we've mentioned the word a lot. QA can also stand for question asker. That is always going to be our skill. When you peel it all back, we are great question askers. I don't care what anyone says. That's what we're going to need going forward. All those traits I mentioned earlier about what's relevant right now for QEs, they're going to be just as relevant going forward. I feel QEs are going to have to learn to become the conductors of the orchestra because underneath the bonnet, the agents, the smart, intelligent automation, everything that we're scared of could be doing a lot more stuff for us. However, it needs that conductor in front of the orchestra. And that's where I think QEs can add value. I think we're going to have to embrace agentic AI. I don't think there's any hiding from it. But guess what? Agentic flows need testing, right? We can't just, a lot of these agentic tools have test frameworks embedded within them. So N8N has a test framework within it, just like the Alexa developer toolkit had a test frame within it. But guess what? It only does so much, right? I still think we're going to need human eyes on stuff. I still think everything that makes us strong now is going to be needed for AI. We're going to have to develop new skills, but guess what? We've been here before. When the cloud came out, when all the automation tools came out, we had to evolve and change and become Madonna. I'm sorry, Paul. We had to become Madonna in order to evolve and stay relevant, right? So in order to stay relevant, we're going to have to learn, back to Suhas's point, around continuous learning, continuous improvement. The truth is, none of us on this call know what the future holds for us because things we've never lived through this scale of or velocity of change before. One thing we're going to have to conquer is being able to pivot and change at pace. We're going to have to say, okay, we're investing in this decision for 3 months, and guess what? The rate of AI means we're going to have to probably rip that decision down and start again. But you're absolutely right. I think there's opportunities around roles within companies. So a lot of you can see my name in the bottom corner, Leigh Rathbone. Underneath that, head of AI. In case you joined late, I've only had this role for 3 weeks. But here is someone from a quality-driven background, now head of AI in a company, being tasked with getting AI not just into engineering, but across the company. And this, again, are opportunities for people. But you asked about roles, Matt, and I'll wrap up now. I think there will be a number of roles that will come out, and I do have a couple of them written down. Obviously, the prompt engineer isn't new. That's been around for 4 or 5 years, but I think it's already had its day. I think that role is already done. Because I think prompt engineering, if you put that on your CV in, say, 12 months' time, that's a bit like saying I can use Microsoft Word. It's like saying I can breathe oxygen. No one's going to care, right? So people, I think something like an AI ethicist that looks at the ethics within AI could be an opportunity for a QE. I think things like, and I love these ones, right? I have written them down. The AI reliability engineer, the AI security analyst, the AI governance lead. There's loads of opportunities, but I've got 3 I'll end on, Matt, and then I'll hand over to Paul. The AI fire starter, twisted fire starter. What's that? Whenever there's a movement, whenever there's something new, you need a cheerleader, an advocate, a fire starter. I think there is opportunities for QEs to be that AI fire starter, the advocate, right? So somebody that drives the AI throughout your company. And then, of course, wherever you have a fire person starting fires, you need someone that puts those fires out, or the right fires out. So there you go, governance, or just keeping an eye on, are we being ethical and safe? And the last thing I'll close on is glue work. I first mentioned glue work in 2016 when I visited the BBC. And I said, glue work is what we do. QEs do it. I think it's stuff that's never written in the job description, and we just spot the gaps and go after it. I think there is a role for an AI glue person, someone that spots the value in the AI landscape. It's never written down. It's never in any job description, but it keeps the team safe. It keeps the customer safe. It keeps the company safe. And I'm done.
Some gold there. I think there's some gold there. I talk to so many people who are in quality roles that within companies where the role itself isn't evolving, but the reality is that at some point there probably will be a moment within that company where something changes, and we see it a lot. There's been some big companies made these decisions over the last few weeks, high profile, and I think that the ones who are thinking about these things, those job titles Leigh mentioned, there's a lot of different areas there where your skills and experience can be useful in a different or slightly different role. That still is quality focused, and I think those are really good things for people to be thinking about, definitely. Paul, do you want to just give us your view on what you think might come next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. So obviously I've spoken about QE being bigger than just QEs doing what they do, but actually I'm going to focus on the QEs now, because I think that's where we're strongest as a community on this call. Now, I presented with several of my colleagues at the UK IT leaders in Manchester a couple of months ago about the impact of vibe coding. And one of the messages we were trying to get across was that vibe coding, to Suhas's point, and I think points made here about it's going to create this ability to turn out code and deliver stuff. I think Leigh said about the amount of code that's going to be delivered is going to be enormous. Totally agree with that, and that in itself should worry us, because one thing that, regardless of the technology and the pace we can deliver, one of the things that the human race seems to never have been able to actually nail is what good requirements look like. And AI is 100% fed by what we tell it. And so if we can turn out lots and lots of code with bad direction, then actually what we're going to do is create lots and lots of bad quality solutions really, really quickly. And so to the points that have been made here, that's going to mean that QEs are going to need to be able to respond. And this is how they're going to evolve, is they're going to have to be able to move at the pace that AI is kicking out code and solutions to test. That's both exciting and scary at the same time, because in nearly 30 years of doing this, the requirements question has never been nailed. As far as I'm concerned, we're still as bad as we ever were at doing that. And I think vibe coding AI solutions create the opportunity to create so much bad stuff so much faster. That's a real worry. The other thing is the nature of solutions. The AI solution itself, and there's no getting away from it. A lot of the solutions we're going to be building are going to have this intelligent or a level of intelligence within them. And the QE is going to have to think more and more about the data that sat behind it, validating the data that sat behind it, than the actual solution itself. And that's because you can't turn around and say that the solution you've built is delivering you the right outcome if you don't know what was behind it. Now, because the AI solutions are interpreting, QEs are going to have to become masters at interpreting results. It's not black and white anymore. It could be a whole host of results come back, of which they all could be appropriate. So the QEs are going to have to start to understand the data much better, and they're going to need to be able to, say, that answer is different to what I got 2 days ago, but it's still right. I'm still happy with it. It's still sufficient. And that's where the evolution's going to be. It's going to be about, to some extent, going backwards in holding people to account with the wider QE disciplines of good requirements, bad data in, bad solutions out, good data in, good solutions out. We're going to have to force that and push that a lot more, but then we're going to have to evolve how we think about end results and what good looks like. I think on top of that, as a wider thing, and another thing I said at the UK IT leaders was that config management is going to take a big hit with the pace of delivery as well. And so as a quality discipline, that's something that's going to have to evolve.
Just briefly on that point, if you can, what do you mean by that on config management?
If code can be turned out very, very fast and delivered very quickly into solutions, and you've got disciplines like scaled agile, and you've got many people delivering lots of stuff really, really quickly, I think it's going to be very easy to lose control of baselines.
Okay, appreciate that. I've taken loads from that, obviously, but I've just written down here that's been mentioned multiple times in those answers. Quality engineers absolutely going to still be the gatekeepers, more so with increased use of AI. Governance and security are going to be absolutely massive. Leigh's mentioned a few sort of role types that actually could focus on those areas specifically that quality engineers could get involved with. We've had some great people putting some stuff in the comments as well. I'm going to flash a couple up that I actually thought were really interesting. So Ben Danby, like when automation came into play, AI is another tool on the tool belt for us to use and can help by doing a lot of the heavy lifting, especially the really well understood but repetitive activities, leaving the humans to do the difficult or critical thinking in various parts, not just testing. Leigh was talking about the question asker, the need for the question asker even more so now. So some of these tools can take up some of the heavy lifting, but that core skill of testing is absolutely still going to be there. Loads of good stuff come in. So what's Abdul said, market forces efficiencies, I think being adaptable is key. Feel like QA is going through the front end, back end, full stack moment. And then I think this was Melissa who said, are we at risk of burnout with having to be multi-skilled and risk losing deep expertise in whatever it may be, which is a really interesting point, because I was talking about the fact that teams seem to be driving efficiencies, getting more from less people, but does that mean we're potentially going to lose some skills along the way?
Can I add to that? Because it's a great point from Melissa.
Go on, briefly,
yeah, very quickly. I think devs are going to lose the depth and tacit knowledge of when you when you handwrite code, you build tacit knowledge up. Right. If devs are using AI to create more code, they're going to lose that depth of knowledge. So when things go wrong, they're not going to know where the problem is. And there's one example to back up Melissa's, but looking at it from an engineering perspective, we could probably apply that to us writing automation code. If it's Playwright, MCP doing it, we're losing that depth of knowledge when we actually handcraft code with our own hands.
Well, that's the same for a lot of things, not just in technology. With the use of AI, is that, you know, it does all the thinking for you in theory, gives you the answer, and a lot of the time you don't take it in the same way. There's so many examples of that, which is going to be fascinating. I'm going to close off with something that Dan said here, because I think it's got a nice ring to it. Leigh was saying, people are saying testing's dead. Dan Ashby said the full statement is testing is dead, long live testing, which I think is a lovely way to finish. So I just want to say, thanks so much to everyone who's contributed today. We've had absolutely loads and loads of comments and questions in there. Obviously, most of all, thanks to Paul, Leigh and Suhas for giving up their time today. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. And I hope you've enjoyed it. So this event will go onto YouTube within the next 24 hours. So you can see a copy of that on there. There's also loads of other videos, loads of other good content that QEBabble's done over the last 10 years. It has been 10 years since I started doing these. So do check that out. And thanks again for joining. Got 2 events planned already for next year. So we're going to do one which is going to be on crowd testing. So quite an interesting topic there, something which isn't that talked about, that is a really interesting way of approaching things. And then we're going to look at low-code automation in the advent of AI as well. We've spoken about that a little bit today as well. So is that the holy grail? Is that the answer to all our questions? We'll be talking about that in February. So thanks for joining. An early Merry Christmas, everyone.